Listen to me right now. Some of you have been waiting too long. You're waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity, the right people, the right circumstances. And while you're waiting, time is slipping through your fingers like sand. Here's the truth. Waiting doesn't build wealth. Waiting doesn't build a legacy. And waiting doesn't build your future. What builds is action. What builds is courage. What builds is starting before you think you're ready. Today's message is simple but life-changing. Stop waiting, start building. Because the longer you wait, the more expensive that waiting becomes. Waiting is the silent wealth killer because it disguises itself as wisdom, as patience, as prudence, but in reality, it's procrastination dressed up in respectable clothing. People convince themselves that they're being strategic when in truth they are stalling, and every day that passes by without decisive action, the gap between where they are and where they could be grows wider. Think about it. Opportunity doesn't wait. It doesn't stand around politely until you feel comfortable, ready, or fully resourced. Opportunity shows up, and if you're not bold enough to seize it, it passes by and becomes someone else's breakthrough. That's the hidden cost of waiting. It's not just time slipping away. It's momentum lost, connections missed, and doors that close before you ever walk through them. Here's the truth. Waiting never built wealth. Waiting never built confidence. And waiting never built a legacy. Builders build, and dreamers who keep waiting eventually look back on their lives with regret. Have you ever noticed how the people who achieve massive success are not the ones who had everything lined up in the beginning? They weren't the smartest, the most resourced, or even the most talented. They were the ones who refused to let waiting be an excuse. They understood something powerful. It's easier to correct movement than it is to manufacture momentum out of nothing. If you're moving, you can adjust, you can pivot, you can learn. But if you're sitting still, the only thing you can do is watch time pass. Waiting is expensive, and the price tag is not always obvious. The cost is the idea you never launched, the business you never started, the conversation you never had, the book you never wrote. The cost is the market you could have entered early but missed because you were waiting for perfect timing. The cost is the confidence you could have built if you had just taken the first step instead of convincing yourself you weren't ready. Waiting robs you quietly like a thief in the night, and the tragedy is that most people don't even realize it until it's too late. The hook is this: what if the thing you're waiting for is actually waiting for you? What if the resources you think you need only show up once you've started? What if the clarity you crave is hidden inside the action you've been avoiding? What if your destiny is standing on the other side of the very step you've been delaying? You see, the longer you wait, the more expensive the wait becomes. Opportunities are like waves. They come, they rise, they pass. You either ride them or you watch them crash on the shore. Ask yourself honestly, how many more waves are you willing to watch go by before you decide to move? Every great builder, every great leader, every great innovator at some point had to stop waiting and start building. They had to silence the voice that said, not yet, and amplify the voice that said, now. Wealth is not created by hesitation. Wealth is created by motion. Legacy is not born out of waiting. Legacy is carved out of boldness. If you want to change your life, your family, and your future, you have to stop underestimating the cost of waiting. The silent wealth killer is not that you don't know enough. It's not that you don't have enough. It's not that you're not enough. It's that you're waiting too long to begin. So here's the challenge. What will waiting cost you if you let it? And more importantly, what could you gain if you decide today to start building? Clarity is not something that shows up before you move. Clarity is something that reveals itself as you move. Too many people are sitting on the sidelines of their own destiny because they believe the lie that they have to see the entire path before they take the first step. They're waiting for a perfect picture, a flawless plan, a guaranteed outcome, and in the process, they remain stuck in the fog of indecision. But clarity doesn't come to those who wait. Clarity comes to those who work. You don't discover direction by standing still. You discover it by moving forward, by testing, by trying, by adjusting. It's like headlights on a dark road. They don't show you the entire journey. They only illuminate the next few feet. But if you keep driving, the road unfolds as you go. Here's the trap most people fall into. They think confusion is a signal to stop, when in reality, confusion is an invitation to move. You don't overcome confusion by sitting and thinking harder. You overcome it by taking a step and letting the experience refine your vision. Builders understand that action is the ultimate teacher. Every attempt, every adjustment, every small step forward gives you more information than 1,000 hours of overthinking. Clarity is not a prerequisite for action. Clarity is the reward of action. Think about it when you learn to ride a bike. You didn't wait until you fully understood balance before you got on. You learned balance by wobbling, by pedaling, by sometimes falling. And through the act of doing, clarity arrived. The same principle applies to your business, your calling, your wealth building. The clarity you are desperate for is on the other side of the risks you're too afraid to take. The moment you put yourself in motion, the fog begins to lift. The vision sharpens, the path becomes visible, and the steps make sense, but only to the one who dares to move. Here's the hook. What if the clarity you've been praying for is actually hidden inside the very action you've been postponing? What if the reason you feel lost is because you've convinced yourself you need to know everything before you start, when in truth you just need to start? What if you're delaying not because you don't know enough, but because you're unwilling to discover through doing? That hesitation is keeping your vision blurry, because clarity doesn't come to the passive, it comes to the participant. Action is a filter. It reveals what works and eliminates what doesn't. The moment you step out, life gives you feedback, and feedback creates focus. You cannot strategize yourself into certainty. You can only act yourself into it. This is why builders move while others wait. They understand that mistakes don't break them, mistakes make them. Every attempt sharpens their sight, every failure forges their focus, every imperfect action paves the way toward clarity. Some of you are waiting for God to give you a complete blueprint, but God doesn't hand out finished maps. He hands out instructions for the next step. It's not because he wants to frustrate you, it's because he wants to grow you. If you had the entire picture, you wouldn't need faith. Faith is stepping into the unknown, trusting that the next step will appear. And the more steps you take, the clearer the journey becomes. So here's the truth. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to climb the first step. Clarity is not in the thinking, it's in the moving. Stop demanding a full picture before you commit, and start trusting that clarity will come in the process of building. Every step you take pulls the curtain back a little more, and before long, the path you once thought was hidden becomes the path you were meant to walk. Stop telling yourself that you will start when the resources show up, because that is one of the greatest lies keeping people locked in mediocrity. Resources do not precede responsibility. Responsibility attracts resources. The world doesn't reward people who wait for provision. It rewards people who move with conviction. When you step out and take ownership of the vision, the people, the money, the opportunities, and the tools begin to align themselves with your commitment. That's why so many people stay stuck. They are waiting for what only comes after they start. Think about this. When you plant a seed, you don't wait until you have a forest to water it. You water the small seed with faith, and as you nurture it, it grows into something capable of producing fruit. The resources are hidden inside the responsibility. But too many people want the fruit before they plant. They want the harvest before they sow. And they want the resources before they carry the weight. It doesn't work that way. You don't get the provision until you show the vision. The moment you decide to own the responsibility, that's when the resources begin to flow. Here's a hook to consider. What if the very thing you've been waiting for is waiting on you to prove you're serious? What if the money you say you don't have is locked behind a door that only opens when you demonstrate commitment? What if the investors, the partners, the mentors, and the opportunities are already positioned, but they won't reveal themselves until you take the first step? The world doesn't give resources to dreamers who hesitate. It gives resources to builders who take responsibility. Responsibility is magnetic. When people see you taking action, when they see you carrying the load without excuses, when they see you doing what you can with what you have, they are far more likely to come alongside and invest in you. Nobody wants to put fuel into a car that's parked indefinitely. But if the car is moving, if the engine is running, if there's evidence of progress, people will contribute to that momentum. That's why responsibility has to come first. It proves that you're ready to handle the resources wisely. The truth is, most people don't have a resource problem. They have a responsibility problem. They've been given enough to start, but instead of starting, they complain about not having more. And because they don't start, they never grow the capacity to attract more. Responsibility stretches you, it disciplines you, it matures you, and as you grow into it, more is added to you. Scripture says, to whom much is given, much is required. But here's the flip side: to whom much is required, much will be given. If you're willing to take on the responsibility, you qualify yourself for the resources. Another hook: what if the reason resources seem scarce is because they're waiting for the builder version of you, not the waiting version of you? Resources are attracted to movement. Money looks for momentum. Opportunities seek out responsibility. If you keep telling yourself that you'll start once everything lines up, you'll find yourself years later realizing that nothing ever lines up until you line yourself up with responsibility. The bridge between where you are and the resources you desire is built with the bricks of responsibility. Stop believing that resources are the starting point. They're not the start, they're the supply that comes as you prove faithful with the little you already have. Builders don't say, I'll wait until I can build something big. Builders say, I'll build something small right now and let it grow. And as they build, as they take responsibility, resources show up, doors open, and opportunities multiply. Responsibility is not the burden that drains you, it's the magnet that brings everything you've been waiting for closer to you. Confidence is not something you wait to feel before you move. Confidence is something you create by moving. Too many people are trapped in the illusion that once they feel certain, once they feel secure, once they feel confident, then they'll step into their calling, then they'll build that business. Then they'll take that risk. But that is not how confidence works. Confidence is not a prerequisite. It's a byproduct. It is not the fuel you need to start. It's the reward you get for starting. If you keep waiting until you feel confident, you will never begin, because confidence is born in action, not in hesitation. When a child first learns to walk, they don't wait until they feel steady to take a step. They wobble, they fall, they stumble. But with every attempt, they get stronger. Their confidence grows because they kept moving despite the instability. The same principle applies to you. Every time you take a step forward, even if it's shaky, you are training your mind, your spirit, and your soul to believe, I can do this. Confidence doesn't arrive at your doorstep fully grown. It grows in you as you prove to yourself that you can handle more than you thought. Here's the hook. What if the confidence you've been waiting for is actually waiting for you? What if it's not out there somewhere, but it's locked inside the action you keep postponing? What if the reason you don't feel confident is because you've been practicing hesitation instead of practicing courage? Confidence grows where action lies. The people you admire, the ones who seem so bold, so fearless, so unstoppable, they weren't born with confidence. They built it one step at a time. They built it by doing what they were afraid to do until fear lost its grip on them. The reason confidence feels elusive is because most people want it to be gifted instead of generated. But nobody can hand you confidence. It is self-made. And the good news is you already have everything you need to build it. Every small win you create, every fear you confront, every time you act without waiting for perfect conditions, you're depositing into your confidence account. Over time, those deposits compound, and you look back and realize you've built a wealth of self, belief that nobody can take from you. Confidence is not about never feeling fear. Confidence is about refusing to let fear dictate your choices. That the presence of fear doesn't disqualify you, it's the opportunity to qualify yourself. Courage comes first, confidence follows. If you want to feel more confident, you don't need more affirmations, you don't need more waiting, you don't need more information, you need more action. Because every act of action silences the doubts that whisper in your head. Here's another hook. Imagine what your life would look like 6 months from now if you decided today to stop waiting for confidence and start building it. Imagine what kind of builder, leader, entrepreneur, or creator you would become if you understood that confidence is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. You don't overcome fear by standing still. You overcome it by moving forward despite its voice. The irony is this: the very thing you think you need before you act is the very thing you only get by acting. So stop negotiating with fear and stop waiting for confidence to magically appear. Begin with small, consistent steps. Speak up in that meeting. Launch that idea. Have that conversation. Try that strategy. And every time you move, you grow stronger, braver, more certain. Confidence is built, not borrowed. It is your creation, your construction, your legacy. The question is not, when will confidence show up for me? The question is, when will I start building it for myself? Fear is a liar, and most people don't realize how much it is controlling their lives. Fear shows up in many forms. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of losing what you already have. And it convinces you to stay in a safe zone that is slowly shrinking your potential. Fear whispers that you're not ready, that you're not capable, that you'll never succeed. But here's the truth that most people don't understand. Fear doesn't stop failure. Fear stops action. And as long as you let fear dictate your choices, your dreams remain just that, dreams. The people who achieve greatness are not those without fear. They are those who decide to act despite fear. They understand that fear is not a stop sign. It's a guidepost pointing to where growth and reward lie. The hook is this: what if the thing you fear the most is actually the very thing that will bring your biggest breakthrough? What if the rejection you're afraid of, the risk you hesitate to take, the conversation you avoid, is the doorway to the life you've been waiting for? Fear exaggerates danger, it magnifies risk, it paralyzes potential, but faith exposes truth. Faith sees opportunity where fear sees threat. Faith is the antidote to fear, not the absence of it. You don't have to feel fearless, you have to feel willing. Willingness overpowers fear when you take consistent action. Most people are negotiating with fear instead of building with faith. They ask, what if I fail? Instead of asking, what if I succeed? Fear focuses on what can go wrong. Faith focuses on what can go right. Fear keeps you sitting on the sidelines while life passes by. Faith gets you moving, even imperfectly, in the right direction. Builders understand that fear is a signal, not a roadblock. When fear rises, it often points to the very area where you need to grow, the very step you need to take to reach the next level. Avoiding fear doesn't eliminate risk, it eliminates opportunity. Here's another hook. Fear often masquerades as wisdom. It tells you to wait, to prepare, to hesitate, to do more research, to be more perfect. But this is the trap. Perfection is a prison built by fear to keep you small. Success is not reserved for those without fear. It is reserved for those who learn to navigate it. Every successful person has felt fear, doubted themselves, and faced uncertainty. The difference is that they refused to let fear determine the outcome. They acted when their heart was pounding, when their hands were shaking, and that action created momentum that fear could not stop. Fear thrives in the absence of action, and faith thrives in motion. The longer you sit waiting for fear to vanish, the more it gains control over your life. But every step you take, every decision you make, every risk you embrace chips away at fear's power. Momentum is fear's kryptonite. Once you start moving, fear can't keep up with you. It loses its grip, and what once seemed terrifying becomes manageable, and what once seemed impossible becomes achievable. So ask yourself, which voice will you build with? The one that freezes you in the face of uncertainty, or the one that pushes you forward toward opportunity? Fear wants to protect you, but its protection is often disguised as limitation. Faith wants to elevate you, but it demands courage, action, and persistence. The people who win in life, business, and legacy understand this principle. They honor fear for the awareness it brings, but they refuse to build their future inside fear's shadow. Instead, they use it as a compass, a signal, a challenge to rise above. The moment you embrace that truth, your life begins to shift, because fear will no longer dictate your destiny, faith will. Small steps create massive shifts because the journey to greatness is rarely made in giant leaps. It is built brick by brick, moment by moment, decision by decision. Most people are looking for the shortcut, waiting for the perfect opportunity, or hoping for an overnight miracle, but life doesn't work that way. The people who succeed, the people who build wealth, influence, and legacy understand that progress compounds. Every small, consistent action adds up, and over time, those seemingly insignificant steps become the foundation for extraordinary results. You don't need a grand start. You need a disciplined start, and every step, no matter how small, moves you closer to the life you've been waiting for. Here's the hook. What if the thing that feels too small to matter today is the exact thing that determines your future success? What if the effort you dismiss, the call you make, the idea you act on, the relationship you nurture, is the seed that grows into everything you desire? Most people underestimate the power of small beginnings because they are looking for instant validation, instant results, instant recognition. But the reality is, the universe rewards persistence and consistency more than it rewards bursts of effort followed by inactivity. Massive shifts are rarely the result of dramatic moves. They are the result of small moves multiplied over time. Small steps also build momentum, and momentum is the secret weapon of success. Once you begin, each step forward creates energy that propels you to the next step. Stagnation and waiting kill momentum, but motion fuels it. The first step is always the hardest, but once you take it, the next step becomes easier, and the one after that easier still. The power is not in the individual step, it is in the accumulation of steps. The slight edge of daily action compounds into extraordinary outcomes that people who are waiting can only dream about. Think about a snowball rolling down a hill. At first, it's small, almost invisible. But with consistent rolling, it gains mass, speed, and unstoppable force. That is the law of small steps. Every task you complete, every lesson you learn, every effort you make adds weight to your momentum. It's easy to discount small victories, but they are the silent engines that drive massive success. The hook here is this: if you underestimate small steps, you're underestimating your own potential to create enormous change. Another truth is that small steps build confidence, skill, and resilience. Every time you take action, you learn something new. Every small success reinforces your belief that you can succeed again. Every obstacle you overcome in the process strengthens your ability to handle bigger challenges. Success is not just about the end goal, it's about becoming the person capable of achieving that goal. Small steps transform you into that person. They sculpt your character, sharpen your mind, and fortify your determination. Here's a hook that hits hard. Most people quit before the compound effect takes hold because they expect immediate transformation. They abandon the process because the results aren't visible quickly enough. But just like interest compounds over time, the results of consistent action accumulate quietly, invisibly, and then suddenly they explode into something undeniable. The question is not whether small steps matter. They do. The question is whether you are disciplined enough to keep taking them day after day without seeing immediate reward. Small steps also eliminate the paralysis that comes with overwhelm. Large goals can intimidate, they can freeze you into inaction. But when you break your vision into manageable steps, the journey becomes actionable. The fear of, I can't do it all, is replaced with the power of, I can do this next step. Each small step taken is a victory, a momentum booster, and a confidence builder. The accumulation of these steps is unstoppable, and it ultimately creates the massive shift that people think only comes from luck, genius, or a sudden breakthrough.